Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, TV, and streaming. And guys, it's good to be back, and we are joined, of course, by writer, producer, director. He's, of course, got a film out right now called Tango Shalom, the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how are you doing today, sir?
John, my life has been empty. I mean, Monday, and I didn't get to see you. We didn't get to talk about all this great movie news. I didn't know what to do with myself.
And, you know, a big day coming up, because I believe you were telling me this on October 18th, that good Canadian kid, William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, will be going into space. Now, can you confirm or deny any of the rumors that he's going to be taking a copy of Free Enterprise into space with him to have floating in orbit around the globe? Of course, Free Enterprise is the movie that you wrote and directed with William Shatner. So will he be taking that with him?
I don't think so. But funny enough, John, we wrote a sequel we almost made in 2010. And the end of that sequel actually had Shatner going into space with Richard Branson on Virgin Galactic. I mean, we missed who he was going into space with, but we came close. It would have been prophetic. What could have been, John, but now is going to be for real. So I can't believe it. I mean, William Shatner going to space in a phallic-shaped rocket. Wow.
Only William Shatner can do that. Now,
God bless him.
Just to let you guys know, as Rob alluded to, we did not have a show yesterday because I have been off in Vegas the last number of days for the annual World Series of Poker. And I went and played in it, had a great time. I played in, because a few people asked, so I played in event number 4. It was the $5 million reunion tournament, they called it. It's a 3-day tournament with a little over 12 to 15,000 entrants. I played on day 1B, and I got in there. I lasted 8 hours. You had to get into the top 12% to cash out. I got into the top 40, so I busted out of the tournament after about 8 hours. But I was telling Rob this story too. So after I was done playing in the tournament, I thought, well, I still feel like playing some poker. So at about 8 o'clock at night on Saturday, I went over to the Wynn, the hotel on the Strip. I went to the Wynn to play poker over there. And I sat down at the table, and I was telling Rob who it was, but I'm not going to say who it is publicly. I sat down at the table, and I'm sitting there with a celebrity you all know quite well, who was actually a pretty good poker player. And Rob, I got to show you pictures of that too. But anyway, I played, I kid you not. So I sat down at about 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and I played until 8:30 p.m. Sunday. I played over 24 hours straight, nonstop. The only time I stopped was to get up to go use the bathroom. That was it. I played about 24 hours nonstop, had a pretty good time. I won a little over $3,000 playing at a cash game at the Wynn over 24 hours. So yeah, it's like, hey, listen, you know what? Here's the thing, Rob, I don't actually get to play poker that often. I don't get to play poker that often. I only go to Vegas, I go to Vegas a lot compared to most people, but really it's about 6 times a year, about only every couple of months do I get to go to Vegas. So I felt like when I was there, well, I'm here. I might as well get in as much playing poker as I can since I came out here for this. So yeah, that was, but here's the thing. I was telling Rob this. I started to realize my back was hurting. Because, you know, you're sitting in this one chair for that long, and it's not a very good chair at the Wynn. The Wynn was a great poker room, but not very good chairs. And so my back started hurting. And when I got the cab to go back to my hotel at Caesars, I realized my back was really hurting. And then when I went to get out of the cab, I could barely stand up. And then I was very slowly making my way through Caesars to get back to my hotel room. And when I got to my room, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a shower before I go to bed, but first I'm going to lay down for a minute. I laid down for about 10 minutes, and then I realized I couldn't move. Every little thing, like even trying to move my shoulder like this, sent a spike of pain through my body. It took me 10 minutes to get my legs off the side of the bed, let gravity pull me down to the floor as I slithered out of the bed, and then from the floor got to my feet, took a shower, laid back down. Then I was done. My buddy Soul then came by my room and said, dude, I'm like, I can't move. I literally can't move. So he ran across the street to Walgreens. God bless Soul. Thank you very much, Soul. He ran across the street to a Walgreens, bought me an electric heating pad, got it under my back. I fell asleep, and in the morning, my back still hurt, but I was able to move. I'm like, oh, okay, I can move. Good. So anyway, that was my thing. I will never, Rob, play 24 hours of poker straight again. I will. It was unbelievably painful.
You just need an Iron Man exosuit.
That's it. That's all I need. And then I'm totally good. So that is all I need, but I am never going to play 24 hours straight again. I don't care how much I make. I'm not going to do it again. Anyway, guys, we are back. That's the point. We are back now. It is Tuesday, and we're ready to get going. By the way, our friend, the Jughead 1, sends in a super chat badge in the live chat from the UK. Thank you, the Jughead. Appreciate that, man. We are back, and it's good to be back here on the John Campea Show. Here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to break the show into two parts. The first half of the show, we're going to take some predetermined topics. Then in the second half of the show, we're going to go on and take your live comments and questions. And that's how we're going to do it. And a little bit of housekeeping, by the way. If you can't be in front of a YouTube channel for your daily fix of the John Campea Show, good news. There's an audio-only version of this show in podcast form called the John Campea Show Podcast, and it's on all the big podcasting apps. So whatever your favorite podcasting app of choice is, just go onto it, search for the John Campea Show Podcast, sign up for it so the podcast is there when you need it. And a big thank you to all you guys who have already signed up for the podcast. It's good to have you here. Okay, guys, with that down and out of the way, let's move to an off the top here before we get into our main topics. And our off the top is this. You know, Rob, HBO, I've said for a long time, they are the gold standard. There are other great outlets that do really good television. Netflix certainly comes to mind. They do a great job as well. But HBO has been, for the longest time, and continues to be the gold standard when it comes to producing top shelf excellence in their television programming. And one of the things they've got coming up that obviously has a lot of people talking about it is the Game of Thrones prequel series, The House of the Dragon, that they've been talking about. We saw our first images from it a little while ago, but as of this morning, we've got our first look of footage. They released about a minute-long trailer as a part of a promo package because HBO Max is getting to roll out in Europe, which congrats to all of our European film loving brothers and sisters. They're going to finally get some HBO Max out there. So they played a little bit of it on there. And I'll tell you what, Rob, it's just 1 minute. It was just a feel of it. But Matt Smith, who I am just adoring and appreciating Matt Smith more and more and more all the time. He narrates this thing, and I like it here. Gods, kings, fire, blood, we rule through dragons, or something along those lines. It was a spectacular, wonderful, wonderful line that I loved. It had the right feel. It had the right tone. And Rob, I know not everybody appreciated the ending of Game of Thrones. I personally did. I actually really enjoyed the final season of Game of Thrones. So there have at it. But even most people I know who weren't all that thrilled with how the Game of Thrones ended, they all seem to be looking forward to the House of the Dragon. I thought the trailer was great. Rob, you had a chance to check it out too. What did you think of it?
Well, you know, I didn't think they showed us a lot.
No, certainly not.
I'm intrigued by the concept of it all. I mean, I think I love me some good court intrigue, John. And, you know, I think the Targaryens, I don't think any dynasty was talked about more than the Targaryens in the entirety of the 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. So I think it's a smart move to do this. And, you know, like you said, Matt Smith, he's a great actor, and coming off The Crown and coming off of Doctor Who, I'm excited to see this. I hope it's good.
Yeah, again, and I thought they just kind of captured the feel of it like really, really well. So I don't know. The show may be great. The show may be terrible, but whatever. I thought this little 1 minute thing they showed us there was actually pretty good. The question is for you guys. Did you have a chance to see this first little bit of footage, this first little sizzle, if you will, for the House of the Dragon? If so, what did you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and leave us your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on over to our main topics here today, shall we? And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really simple. You see, you guys come up with our main topics. Whenever you come across a big topic, issue, or story that you guys feel needs to be a main topic on the show, just go anytime, 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's absolutely free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Jao Edits, who writes, "Hey, John. Deadline reported that a live-action American-born Chinese series is in the works at Disney+, with Destin Daniel Cretton, who of course just directed Shang-Chi, set to direct. It follows a teenager juggling high school life with his immigrant home life whilst becoming entangled in a battle with Chinese mythological gods." I mean, all of us had that experience in high school. "John, I don't know about you, but this sounds awesome to me. With Daniel directing, brah, bring it on. Thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And of course, what he was able to do, what Destin Daniel was able to do with Shang-Chi, to me was nothing short of remarkable. You know, Shang-Chi is one of the most entertaining films I've seen in a while. I love the action. I love the movie. I saw it 7 times in theaters. I still might try to squeeze in an 8th screening. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But apparently this is based on a graphic novel, Rob, that I'm not aware of. I've never even heard of this graphic novel.
I don't know it either.
Yeah, and so I was kind of surprised to hear that. It made me tempted to go out and check it out. This comes to us from the folks over at Deadline who write, "Written and executive produced by Bob's Burgers executive producer Kelvin Yu, and his brother Charles Yu of Westworld. The series is executive produced by Melvin Marr and Jake Kasdan, of course, you know, of the Kasdan legacy. Asher Goldstein, Just Mercy, and Gene Luen Yang are also executive producers. Kelvin Yu serves as showrunner on the series, which will start casting soon. And of course, Destin is going to be directing that thing. And as he pointed out, it's about this Chinese kid with his family, an immigrant family. He's going to a high school like a normal kid, but he's also having to battle mythological Chinese gods, which to me sounds out of this world. Now, look. I am not the biggest fan of Bob's Burgers, but I haven't really watched a lot of it. I've only seen like maybe 3 episodes in my entire life, and I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was super hilarious or anything, but oh my God, Rob, my brother-in-law, Ray, who does our graphics, Ray loves Bob's Burgers. Like he's completely loves that show with an insane passion. I know it's very popular and a lot of people do too. So I think it's an interesting thing that showrunner is going to come over and do the show running of this. Rob, I got to tell you, having never heard of the graphic novel, just reading this, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you I was extremely interested. This sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Sign me up. Sounds good. Rob, you hear about this. What's your impressions of it?
What's not to love? you know, I mean, having loved Chinese fantasy filmmaking most of my life, I've always been interested in seeing something like this, and it sounds good to me, especially with our current technology. Yeah, I think something like that could be great. And our friend coming off our friend, we don't know him. Maybe you know him. I don't know him. But in terms of directing Shang-Chi, I thought he knocked it out of the park. And it sounds like he's a natural fit. So I'll watch this show.
What do you think? What do you think of the fit of it being, you know, on Disney Plus? Do you think that's a good fit for something like this, or would this be something better that would for something like a Hulu or something like that?
Well, I mean, no, it really depends on the tone. I think that obviously he got the job because of the work he did on Shang-Chi, and I would think that it would be a good fit. I mean, look, I think Disney Plus at some point is going to have it's got to have a bit of a harder edge to it. I mean, Marvel's as hard-edged as it gets, you know, unless you're going into that dark place where Logan must exist on the surface somewhere. But I mean, they're going to have to make it a little bit more harder edged, and maybe they can do something like that with this. Although, you know, if you lean heavily into the fantasy aspects of it, I could see it working on Disney Plus quite well.
All right. Question is for you guys. What do you think about the sounds of American-born Chinese? I know nothing about it. When I look at the people involved, I read the synopsis of it. I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm super interested. What about you guys? Does this thing catch your attention? Are you interested? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Whatever you guys are feeling, jump down into the comment section below and leave us your thoughts. And by the way, guys, I just want to give a thank you to Epic Dub Time, who sends in a super chat badge, as does our friend Maurice Seafring. Thank you so much, Maurice. Thanks for sending that in. And just as a result of my little back problem, she sends in this badge of a hippo with a wrecked back sitting on a chair. That's connected to my poker story, of course. And also our friends, Francisco Gomez Vega sends in a super chat badge, as does Daniel Yusuf. So thank you, guys. Appreciate that very much. Okay. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2, shall we? Rob, what is our second main topic today?
Well, this comes to us from Edgar Yomar. Hi, John. Hope your Vegas trip went well, and welcome back. I know you've said you're really excited for the new Matt Reeves Batman movie and that you liked Andy Serkis's Venom 2. Did you see that Serkis was interviewed and asked about the new Batman, and he said it was a masterpiece? What do you think of Serkis's comments, and does it get you more excited for the Batman? Well, first of all, John, as you might know, and you know, I'm sure you do, whenever an actor says a movie that they're in is a masterpiece, even if they're a director and they've been in a lot of great things, you have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. And of course, Matt Reeves and Andy Serkis worked very well together on the Planet of the Apes films they did. And look, we're both excited for this movie. The trailer that they released, I thought looked great. Maybe there was some tension on the set. Who knows? I never pay much attention to that. All I know is I can't wait to see this movie. And I'm jealous every time you put on your hoodie that you have, the merch you have from this film. So I can't wait to see this. Andy Serkis said, quote, "I'll tell you that it was fantastic being reunited with Matt Reeves, producer Dylan Clark, and VFX supervisor Dan Lemon from the Apes films. We had such a great time making it. And when it eventually comes to the screen, Matt Reeves will have made another masterpiece film because he's so super invested in it. But yeah, I've been expressly forbidden, to talk about Alfred." And that comes to us from Andy Serkis. I mean, I'm sure, can you imagine? Here he is. He's got the #1 movie in America. He's being interviewed, doing all kinds of things. And I mean, Warner Brothers had to call him up and go, yo, you can't talk about Alfred. Not even a word. And I get it. I'm excited, man. I think we're going to get a bigger glimpse of the movie at DC Fandom, and I am there for it. What about you?
Well, I mean, yeah. First of all, you're right. We're going to get a lot of stuff. Robert Pattinson was just saying him and Kravitz they actually made something specifically for DC Fandom. So, they gave us our first look at it at the first DC Fandom. Now that the film is pretty much is wrapped and all that kind of stuff, they're going to have more to show us there, and I'm excited about that. Look, I've said it for a while. I am stoked about this movie. Now, obviously, again, my fantasy world, we're getting a Batman film written by, directed by, and starring Ben Affleck. I mean, that's my ultimate kind of thing. But I've said for a while, too, that if it can't be Ben Affleck, then having Matt Reeves is a pretty damn good consolation prize. If having Matt Reeves directing this thing is great. And I was thrilled about the casting of Robert Pattinson, despite the fact of everybody going, Twilight Boy. Yes, Twilight Boy. That's right. He's turned into one of the great actors of our generation right now. He's fantastic. And I think he's going to do great. And you're right. We do need to take any time an actor in a movie says something great about their movie, we got to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously we do. But still, it's still nice to hear a guy like Andy Serkis come out and say something like this, because, it tells you that he kind of believes in it. I showed this last night, but, I am personally a huge fan of Andy Serkis. I love Andy Serkis. And Rob, I had my first chance to meet him was at the premiere for Star Wars, The Last Jedi. That's where I first met Andy Serkis. And I was so excited to see him. I went over to meet him and I said, hey, excuse me, Mr. Serkis, I just want to come over and introduce myself. I'm a big fan of yours. My name's John. And one of the biggest thrills of my professional career, when I said, I'm a huge fan of yours, my name's John, he says, oh, I know who you are. Like, And I was telling this story. Last night during the Venom 2 open spoiler discussion. It's like when he said, oh yeah, I know who you are. I was like, on the outside, I'm like, oh, that's great. Well, I just want to say, but inside, I was like pissing my pants and going, like freaking out completely. I was talking to Andy Serkis and he said, oh, I know who you are. Oh my God. I just wanted to cry. Rob, I wanted to cry. I wanted to break down into tears and cry on the spot. But anyway, listen, having a guy like Serkis, who has obviously worked with Matt Reeves before, he understands his work, he understands his director, and as a director himself, and for him to come out and say, look, this is a masterpiece. Again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I do too, but it's still good to hear. But listen, I'll tell you what, we have heard from people inside Warner Brothers. They are thrilled with how this has turned out. And I'm not talking about the BS old reports about, I heard there was the executives of Warner Brothers did a screening and they gave it a standing ovation. None of that BS nonsense. I have actually heard from people inside Warner Brothers that they are thrilled with this movie. And I think everybody loved the trailer for it. I'm excited for it. So yeah, guys, I think this sounds great. Again, it's an actor in the film, like Rob said. It's an actor in the film. Take it with a grain of salt, but I still take it as a really good sign. Question is for you guys. What do you think of Andy Serkis's comments regarding the upcoming The Batman? Do you buy into it? Are you looking forward to it? Maybe you're not interested. Maybe you're one of those guys who just thinks like, you know what? Batman's already been done to death. Whatever you guys are feeling, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on now to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by RG, who writes, James Gunn responded to somebody on Instagram and confirmed that he's developing a brand new DCEU project. He said it won't be announced at Fandom and that it won't be revealed soon. I absolutely adored the Suicide Squad, so I'm very much looking forward to this. What do you think this is? A movie/series about a new character, or maybe another The Suicide Squad spinoff? What are your thoughts? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, look, we talked a while ago about the fact that, first of all, I think James Gunn did a fantastic job with the Suicide Squad. I mean, obviously Warner Brothers dropped the ball with it. They marketed it badly. They put it on they backstabbed the movie by putting on an HBO on the same day, and they undercut it and betrayed it, resulting in the box office did. But it was a huge financial flop. I mean, I'm not taking away from that. It was a huge financial flop, but the movie was great. And that's all the director can do. The director's only responsible for making a good product. It's then up to the distributor, the studio, to then take that product and sell it, and they did a bad job. Again, like I said, they backstabbed it. They betrayed it. That being said, I thought he did a great job with it. Now, since that time, we have heard DC said, oh, we want to stay in the James Gunn business. We want to continue to work with James Gunn. We absolutely love working with him. He can do anything he wants with us, blah, blah, blah. And he's right. They've come out and said that he is doing another one. This comes to us from Slash Film, who writes, by all appearances, Warner Brothers and DC very much wants to stay in the James Gunn business. Where many other filmmakers might have been scared off social media entirely, James Gunn continues to post regularly on Twitter and has recently used his platform to indicate that he is developing yet another DC project after Peacemaker. In a Twitter exchange with fans via Screen Rant, Gunn confirmed that, yes, I'm developing another DC project besides Peacemaker. That comes to us once again from James Gunn. And by the way, Rob, I don't know if you saw this. You know how Instagram and Facebook were down the other day? Did you see,
I do.
Did you see James Gunn's tweet?
Dude, I did.
So for those of you who missed it, James Gunn got on Twitter. And I didn't catch on what he was doing at first. And then when I realized I was laughing my guts out, he jumps on Twitter and says, hey guys, or I'm paraphrasing, but I just put up a big plot, the whole plot outline of the new Guardians of the Galaxy over on my Facebook page. I'm like, what? Oh,
genius.
Facebook's down. It was one of the greatest tweets of all time. Anyway, Rob, we've been talking for a while about the fact that we know James Gunn is going to do more with DC. What the future of the Suicide Squad is, I don't know. Again, it was a big financial flop. We'll see what the guys over at Discovery want to do with it once they take over Warner Brothers. My gut feeling, though, here, Rob, is, and again, I'm not basing this on any actual information. This is just my own speculation as a fan. My gut feeling here is this is going to be a new project. Whether it's, going to be akin to what the Suicide Squad was, whether it's a more popular DC character that we don't know he's getting involved with at this point yet. Like maybe it's maybe it's a Justice League member for all we know. I don't know, but I think it's going to be a different project. And I think it's going to be a solo film. He's done Guardians of the Galaxy. He's now done Suicide Squad. I think he's done a lot of team stuff. I think he might want to focus on one guy. Like after doing Peacemaker for HBO, I think he may want to kind of just zone in, work with one character, male or female character, whatever. So that's kind of my guess. So Rob, not surprised. Disney or Warner Brothers already said they want to stay in the James Gunn business. We've already known he's going to do it. He's confirmed it himself. Rob, were you surprised to hear Gunn himself say, I'm already developing another project? And what do you think this new project might be?
Well, one, they dropped a clip from the Peacemaker series from HBO Max today. And, he's still in the business of DC. Obviously, the Peacemaker series is going to drop soon on HBO Max. And I think, one of the things about Hollywood is people want to work with people they like working with that are talented. And sometimes The Shawshank Redemption didn't make a lot of money when it first came out. And it's one of the most beloved films, and it made a lot of money in its subsequent home video release. And obviously on cable, it's a perennial favorite. I could see that happening to the Suicide Squad. People will rediscover it. And I think that Warner Brothers probably had a great experience working with James Gunn. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. And they still want to be in the James Gunn business because he is a talented filmmaker and he does know what he's doing. And to handle a big ensemble cast the way that he did, and there's some pretty epic action in that movie, I would want to stay in the business of James Gunn because how many filmmakers on the planet are as talented as he is? So it makes sense to me. I'd love to see him, frankly. I'd love to see him do the Blue Beetle Booster Gold movie if they ever made that. Because
it's funny you say a lot of people have been saying that they like to see him do like a Booster Gold. Like we already know they're developing, they're already doing for HBO. They're doing a Blue Beetle, but a lot of people have been saying Booster Gold. You like that?
But it was that wacky relationship that Booster Gold, that the Ted Kord Booster Gold, Ted Kord Blue Beetle and Booster Gold had from Justice League International, which I loved so much from the 80s, and I would love to see him tackle something like that, but he would probably go even weirder, but I'd love to see it, dude. I'm excited. Bring it on.
All right, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this? James Gunn confirming that he is already developing his next DC project. What could it be? No idea. What are your guys' theories about that? Whatever they are, jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move into main topic number 4. Rob, what is our fourth main topic today?
Well, John, our fourth main topic comes to us from Sam Brown. Hey, John and Rob, I know we've been following the IATSE strike vote with a watchful eye, so I was wondering if you saw that according to Deadline, they overwhelmingly voted in favor of striking. While this doesn't mean a strike is happening yet, it means they're prepared to at any point. What does this mean for studios, as they must be quaking in their boots? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, John, for those of you who might not know, of course, IATSE is the union that covers everybody that works on the production side of making a film, both when you are making the film, shooting it, and in post-production. And obviously, everybody works really long hours. A standard workday is 12 hours, which means it's really 14 or 15 hours with commuting time and when you have to get up. And it's been a long time coming. I think that these things have been changed. And obviously, the big problem here is that if you have shorter work days, it's going to take longer to shoot a movie, which could add costs, which is why the producers aren't so keen on it. But the thing is, with our new streaming universe, the money people used to make has changed. And so, unfortunately, the working conditions and the amount of money the money's changing, but the working conditions aren't. This is something that has to happen. And for IATSE, they've now authorized a vote by a wildly overwhelming majority. It gives them even that much more bargaining position at the table when they are negotiating with the producers. Variety tells us the AMPTP, those are the producers basically, remains committed to reaching an agreement that will keep the industry working, the group said in a statement. We deeply value our IATSE crew members and are committed to working with them to avoid shutting down the industry at such a pivotal time, particularly since the industry is still recovering from the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. A deal can be made at the bargaining table, but it will require both parties working together in good faith with a willingness to compromise and explore new solutions to resolve the open issues. Variety says this. But John, from my perspective, I think this needs to happen. And what IATSE has done is they've given themselves more armor. So when they go sit down at the bargaining table with the producers, they're one phone call away, one keystroke, one push that button on a smartphone away for calling a strike. And they've never been in a better bargaining position. So I think it's good that they've called for a strike.
Well, I mean, and it should be made clear to everybody, because the person who wrote this in put it best. They did not vote to strike. Like, a strike is not on. I started getting a lot of messages from people who misunderstood what's going on. They thought, oh, they're on strike now. No, what has happened is that the union members have voted to give the power to call a strike to their president. So now, while the president is at the bargaining table, he, like you said, Rob, he is now one phone call away from saying, boom, we're on strike. They've given him that power to do. Now, Rob, our emailer said, the producers must be shaking in their boots. They are, but I'll tell you who else is shaking their boots. The union is shaking. Everybody's shaking in their boots. Nobody wants a strike. Do you think that IATSE wants to strike? Of course they don't want to. They're in a position where they feel they need to. Do you think the producers want a strike? Obviously not. They don't want a strike. So this is a situation where nobody is happy, but everybody, including and especially IATSE here, is in a position where they are putting themselves in a position where they're not happy because they feel they absolutely must. They need to change the conditions. They need to be able to make a living wage. They need to not have to work themselves to death just to keep their jobs and all that kind of stuff. This has to change. Now, at the same time, if you're the producers, you have to make sure that you're still doing business in a way that you're not losing money doing business. If it's cheaper for you just not to make the movies than it is to make the movies, then you're just not going to make the movies. And I get that. So the producers want to make sure they safeguard that they have a working business model. I appreciate that, Rob. I respect that. You got to make sure, like, if you're running a fruit stand that makes $3,000 a month, you can't pay your guy $2,900 a month. You're going to lose money. You're going to go out of business. I get it. They're trying to make something workable for them. But IATSE at the same time is like, we appreciate that too, but you can't work us to death in order for you to get that. You can't underpay us to a barely livable, if not even livable wage. You got to make it happen. No one wants a strike. No one does. It's not like IATSE now is going, yes, now we get to strike. They don't want to. They feel they need to, or they need to have the power, and they need to have their finger on the trigger, ready to pull it. And the producers have to know they're serious to do it. It'll suck. It'll hurt, but it's what they need to do. And I think the producers understand that. And Rob, I've said from day one, what I believe is going to happen here, and I still believe it, and maybe I'm just being overly optimistic, but what I believe is going to happen here is I believe they would vote to authorize the strike, and they have, and they should. But what I think will happen here is now, look, everybody knows everybody's serious. And I think all of them know a shutdown right now would be catastrophic for everyone. And nobody wants that. And I think both parties are going to have their feet to the fire, and both parties are going to want to get a deal done. And there are certain things that are going to be absolute necessities for IATSE to get. There are going to be some things that they'd like to get that maybe aren't absolute necessaries. There's going to be the same thing from the producers. I got to believe, Rob, that everybody knows a shutdown is bad for everybody, and that cooler heads will prevail, and they will make this deal happen. And I think this move by IATSE, this very smart move by the union, just puts them in a better position to show that, yes, hey, listen, guys, we're at a very, very dangerous spot right now. And you need to know how serious we are. That we're willing to go over the cliff, because not going over the cliff right now is even worse than going over the cliff for us. So we got to change the circumstances. Rob, so I am actually optimistic that this bold move by the IATSE is going to help an actual deal get made before a strike needs to be called. But Rob, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. What do you think? Do you think they're too far apart? Do you think a strike is inevitable? Do you think a deal will get done? What do you think this turns out to be?
Well, I think that obviously our society has been going through a lot of changes over the last decade. And I think the entertainment business sometimes is a little slow on the uptake. And conditions. Look, I've been both a producer and a grunt on a film set. I understand why this has to happen. And on one hand, it's going to make independent productions a little more difficult if we're going to limit production to 10-hour days. But I also believe that kind of thing has to happen. There's been, if even one person gets hurt driving home weary and tired from a film set after a too long day, that's one person too many. And I think that this kind of thing needs to be pulled back. What other business expects a normal day to last 12 hours? You know? And I think that it's something that has to change, man.
Or if you got to keep it at 12 hours, then compensate your workers like they're working 12 hours and 13 hours and 14 hours and 15 hours. Compensate them like they're missing out on their time with their family. Compensate them that they're missing out on their recovery time and their rest time. So you got to do one or the other, Rob. Like, okay, keep the compensation where it is, but we're going to shorten your work days. We're going to make life a little bit better. But okay, we're asking you to do a hell of a lot, so we're going to pay you like we're asking you to do a hell of a lot. So it's got to be one or the other. They got to come to some kind of resolution on this. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this? I personally think this was the right move for the union, and I'm optimistic that I personally feel this is actually going to ultimately lead to a deal getting done and they will avoid a strike. I hope, and I think everybody hopes. What do you guys think is going to happen? Jump on down into the comment section below and leave us your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 5. And by the way, our friend Ian Simon sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate that very much, dude. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 5. And our 5th main topic today gets submitted to us by Jesse Keller. And Jesse Keller writes, "Hey, John. As of writing this message, it is still Sunday, but Box Office Pro just tweeted that Venom, Let There Be Carnage has made a huge $90.1 million for its opening weekend at the North American box office. I know I didn't see that big of a number coming. What are your thoughts about this insane box office number?" All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, Jesse. Now, I talked earlier this week about Venom, or last week, I should say. I had a lot of fun with this movie. It's not for everybody. I understand the first one wasn't for everybody. I get that. But the audience has really been responding to it. It has an 85% audience rating, which is up from the first movie. And the critic rating, while it's not great, is double what the critic rating was for the first one. And so, again, I had a very good time at it. I had a lot of fun. I laughed a lot. I was smiling a lot. I thought the action was great. There's a few scenes that didn't really work for me, but overall, it was I had a really fantastic time. I don't like it as much as the Suicide Squad. I didn't like it as much as Shang-Chi, but I still had a very, very good time with this movie. And Rob, you and I have been talking a lot about what could we see it doing business-wise. And when I realized how much fun the movie was, I upped my thing a little bit. I said about 60. I think you said 70, if I'm not mistaken. So you went a little higher than me. Yeah, well, we were both off because this thing broke the pandemic. This is the biggest opening weekend since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. It beat Fast 9. It beat Shang-Chi. It beat Black Widow. And Rob, by the way, it beat Venom 1. This movie, in a pandemic era still, when we're still in a recovery mode, made more money than its first film did in its opening weekend that wasn't in a pandemic mode. And it made $90 million at the international box office. This comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter, who writes, in a stunning boost for theatrical, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, opened to 90.1 million at the domestic box office, the biggest three-day launch of the pandemic era, fueling the biggest weekend overall since COVID-19 shut theaters down in March of 2020. For the first time during the crisis, domestic box office revenues came in, listen to this, Rob, came in less than 15% behind the same weekend in 2019. On the same weekend 2 years ago, superhero sensation Joker opened to 96.2 million. Venom 2 marks the second best October launch of all time behind only Joker, indicating that moviegoing returned to some semblance of normal over the weekend. That, of course, comes to us from THR, the Hollywood Reporter. And by the way, our friend Kevin Cow sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Kevin Cow. Rob, there are so many numbers here that are WTF numbers. First of all, it set the new era record. The biggest opening weekend since before the pandemic thing. That's like, what? Yeah. Second, it beat its own previous film opening weekend record, weekend number. What? Third, even though we're in a pandemic era, it is the second biggest October opening of all time, only behind Joker, and only 15% for a whole weekend behind what that weekend was in 2019. What? That, Rob, and I think what this shows us was that, you know, I always tell people, don't underestimate how much the audience actually enjoyed Venom and had a good time at it. And I think I was guilty of doing just that. I think I underestimated how much the audience, the average moviegoer, had fun watching the first Venom because they came out again. And Rob, I give credit to movies like Shang-Chi and Free Guy and whatever that started the process of getting people, and before that, Fast 9, even though I didn't like the movie, it did a lot to help getting people back into the theaters again. I give credit to movies like Fast 9, more recently Free Guy, Shang-Chi, for getting people back in the habit of coming back to the movie theaters again. I'm sure that helped as well. But Rob, I heard some people have some lower guesses than me. I heard some people give some higher. I didn't hear anybody say 90 million. Like that's crazy good. And I should have known, because when I was in that theater for the first opening night with Ann, dude, my theater was packed. Other than a few empty seats near the front, my theater was packed. And I started hearing from people saying, dudes, our theaters are packed too, and all this kind of stuff. 90 million. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, Rob, you're seeing these box office numbers rolling in now. Obviously, you guessed a little higher than me, but even it way outdid even your guess, which was higher than mine. Why do you think this movie was able to triumph so hard at the box office this week? And what do you think the overall ramifications? What can we take away from this?
Well, first of all, the first Venom, I think, exceeded everybody's expectations. And I think the reason that it did was people, like you pointed out earlier, just had fun with it. You know, it's a wacky film. And sometimes that's all that's required. You go to the movies to have a good time. And for the people that enjoyed it, Venom was a good time. How do you plus that? You bring in Carnage. It's the impulse of these two wacky creatures fighting one another. I think it's kind of irresistible. The same way that I think everybody, John, could get behind Godzilla fighting Kong. You know, you just think about that and it puts a smile on your face. You know, it's like the idea of Halloween. You go trick-or-treating, you get to dress up and you get candy. What's not to love? You know, and even if you grow up, you know, and you've got kids of your own, Halloween's always fun. I think the idea of Venom versus Carnage was just the idea of it, like Godzilla versus Kong, it just makes you smile if you're so inclined to like those things.
Right.
And I think that people were excited about it. Like, even me, I'm like, I need to get that Carnage hot toy so I can, you know, set up Venom fighting Carnage on my shelf. And I'm not even I wasn't a big fan of the first Venom, but I understand why people liked it, and it's kind of fun. And I think this movie obviously touched a nerve and people had a good time. And, you know, I think this movie kind of knows what it was supposed to be. So apparently it's delivered what people wanted from it. And how many things like you can you say that for, especially in this day and age?
Yeah. But so let's look at this now. So Venom comes out, makes $90 million. If you had told me, Rob, in 2019, hey, there's in 2021, you're going to get Venom 2 and you're going to get 2 MCU movies. Oh, and by the way, Venom 2 is going to outdo both of them in their opening weekend box office. I would have said you're nuts. I would have said you're crazy. But here we are. It's made $90 million. Audiences are flocking out to see it. When you look at the audience responses, it's got an 85% audience rating, higher than the first one. So, Rob, let's look at now next week, this upcoming weekend. We got Bond opening. We got Dune coming. We got a bunch of films coming out. What, if anything, what does this tell us about how we should readjust our expectations box office wise moving forward? Like, is this telling us that, hey guys, the box office is back? Is it just an aberration? Is it, hey, this Venom was a one-off kind of fluke? A lot of people were excited about the first one. They wanted to come back, see it. Or can we expect to see higher than we were expecting? Like, is Bond going to do better than we expecting? What do you think?
I think it is. I mean, maybe not. The thing is, if you actually look at the box office of the last James Bond films, they don't make as much money in America as they make around the rest of the world percentage-wise. However, I think that the hype, the fact that, and for the first time, I would say that Billie Eilish singing this song, if you look at, I went and looked on YouTube on the actual Billie Eilish official video for No Time to Die. There's people that are Billie Eilish fans that haven't seen Bond movies before and went just to hear the song and are loving the movie. I think that this film is going to do quite well. I think it probably will open better than Spectre or Skyfall did. I think there's a lot of interest in this movie, and I think people want to go back to the movies now. And, you know, we've talked about this was a big month for movies, John. We still have a lot of real interesting films come out. Dune's coming out. One Night in Soho is coming out. Halloween Kills is coming out. I think people want to go back to the movies. And I think if Venom is any indication, I think No Time to Die is going to have a huge domestic opening.
Well, now look, it's No Time to Die is obviously going to be number one at the box office next weekend, right? Because it's going to be Venom's second weekend. It's going to be Bond's first. Rob, I did not think that No Time to Die could make $100 million at the box office opening weekend. I didn't think it could. I am reassessing that now. After seeing Venom making 90, I'm now thinking Bond hits 100 million. Over or under 100 million, Rob, for Bond this coming weekend at the domestic box office.
Dude, I'm gonna go with you on that. I think it's gonna make 100 million. It's gonna be the first one. By the way, I do want to correct. You're correct. Shatner, by the way, is going to space on the 12th, not the 18th.
Oh, okay, yeah, because we were talking that off camera, and I said, isn't the 12th? And you said, no, it's the 18th.
I'd
okay,
like
so
to correct myself. I thought it was the 18th. I didn't realize it was so soon.
Okay, so it is the 12th. Okay.
But I do think 100 million, dude. I think it's going to hit it.
Yeah, and a week ago, I didn't think that was possible.
Although, you know what? Let me pull that back, because Venom is 90 minutes long, and No Time to Die is the longest Bond film at almost 3 hours. So Venom could have double the shows that No Time to Die does. So I'm going to pull back. I'm going to say No Time to Die does 80.
But keep this in mind
80.
too. I don't really think number of shows matters until you're getting to a movie that is making like 200 million at the box office, because the only thing about length is, okay, at 90 minutes, you can't add on the extra, or at 90 minutes, you can add on those extra screenings to blah. I don't think that was a problem. Like, I think if people wanted to go see Venom, I mean, the theaters were filling up, but I never heard from anybody saying, oh, I wanted to go see Venom, but all the showtimes were all sold out. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's going to hurt it I don't think it's going to hurt James Bond No Time to Die that much right here. I don't think in order to get 100 million, you don't need those extra. There's enough seats for a 2.5 hour plus long movie to make over 100 million in its opening weekend. Maybe not $250 million on an opening weekend, but there are enough seats out there that enough people can get out and see this to make that kind of money. So I'm going to stick with 100 million. I'm going to say, now the big question here, Rob, is this pertaining to Venom. Can Venom, with Spectre No Time to Die opening next weekend. Can Venom actually keep its second weekend drop between 50 and 60%? That's a huge question, because for most movies, that's where you want your drop to be, somewhere between 50 and 60. You don't want to go over 60. If you're under 50, you're popping bottles of champagne. But it's opening against a major, it's coming into its second weekend against a major release like No Time to Die. Do you think Venom can have a second weekend drop that stays between 50 and 60% drop? Or do you think because of No Time to Die, it'll have a greater than 60% drop?
Ooh. That's a tough call. I think it's going to have a pretty substantial drop. So I would say, what'd you say, 60% drop?
Yeah.
I think yes. I think it's going to have a 60% or more drop.
Yeah, I if it wasn't for James Bond No Time to Die opening, I would have said it would stay between 50 and 6% drop. I think this thing's going to have legs. The audience is entertained by it. People are liking it. They're telling their friends about it, blah, blah, blah. But it's going into a second weekend against one of the most anticipated films of the year. So I agree. I think it's probably going to be a little bit more than a 60% drop, which I think they probably expect. But whatever. The question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Venom 2 shocked the world, making more than 2 Marvel MCU films in its opening weekend. It's got a double the critic score that the first one did. It has a higher audience score than the first one did, sitting at about 85%. What do you guys think? Are you surprised by this thing making $90 million, the second most money in October history, only behind Joker? The most money made in an opening weekend since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker? What do you guys think? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. Okay, guys, with all that down and out of the way, let's now move on and start taking your live comments and questions, shall we? And how do you send in a live comment or question to be read on the show or an upcoming companion video? It's simple. Simply use the tip link that's down in the description of this video. Click on that or enter it in manually at www.streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's appropriate for the show. And of course, I should point out here that we've had to, throw out a number of questions that sent in because they were filled with spoilers. So we had to take out a number of the questions, but you'll be getting your comment or question read on a show if they're appropriate for our show. And of course, you're supporting the channel at the same time. And all of us involved here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys so very much for your support. All right. With that down, let's get into your live comments and questions, shall we? We're going to start things off here with Kane Dennis, who tipped in like $20. Thank you, Kane, for supporting our channel on that level, man. And Kane writes, "Hey, John, first time writing in. It's good to have you here, Kane. I'd like to wish my brother Gabe a happy 16th birthday. He and I watch the show every day, so I wanted to send this in a surprise for him. Thanks for always putting on a great show." Well, thank you so much for the kind words, Kane. And to your brother Gabe, happy birthday, Gabe. Happy 16th. May you have a fantastic, wonderful birthday and a fantastic year filled with victory and triumph ahead of you. Once again, happy birthday to you, man, and thank your brother Kane for sending that in. So thanks a lot for that, Kane. Appreciate that and the kind words. All right, next up, Sean Austin's Wig writes, 2 questions. Well, we'll take one of them. We'll take one. Over or under 50% that Disney leans heavy into the social issues aspect like discrimination of the X-Men universe. Well, you kind of have to. That's kind of what the foundational idea of what the X-Men are. So I'll go over to 50% on that. What comics mixed the Avengers universe and X-Men universe successfully? If they did it successfully in the comics, why worry? Sean, you're confusing. The two are not the same thing. They're not the same thing, Rob. Besides, Rob, in the comics, there's not an Avengers universe and an X-Men universe. They all live in the same world, but it's a completely different medium. It's a completely different medium with a completely different background, so that's not applicable at all. I don't know, Rob, what would you say to that?
Well, I agree. I mean, it's all the same. It's all the same world. And, like I've always said, John, I think when we do get the X-Men introduced into the MCU, they will have been here the whole time.
And I don't know about that. We'll see. By the way, I should mention out that Dove Music, King Tantic, I like that username, King Tantic, and RM all send in super chat badges in the live chat. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that very much. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. Dr. Nova writes, Netflix making bad movies and great TV shows. I don't know if they still do this, but Netflix originals can mean they have exclusive distribution in certain markets. Absolutely. Great movies want to be in cinemas, but great TV shows can go to Netflix and make money. I mean, that's true. Yes. I mean, if a movie's great, what the filmmakers really want to do is have it to be in cinema. So that's true. That could be connected to it as well. But then that doesn't explain how Netflix originals, that really, like the Netflix movies that they actually produce themselves, usually don't turn out to be very good. There are some exceptions. There are some diamonds in the rough, though. But that's a good argument about why the TV ones work out really well. Good point, Doctor. All right, next up. Luis R. writes, Hey, John, have you started the new season of Doom Patrol yet? I have not. I've been pretty busy the last 4 days. Anyway, the Forever Young dance scene at the end of episode 2, which I haven't seen, so I'm going to skip over the rest of your question there, Luis. But anyway, to answer that, I have not seen it yet. I'm going to get caught up here probably today. Today, I'm going to start watching the new season of Doom Patrol because I love that show. All right, Hector O. writes, Watch the Enchantment live stream. I did not. Bob Chapek, the new CEO of Disney, speaking was cringeworthy and definitely not his best. But when Bob Iger spoke, it felt genuine and like he cared about what he was saying. You can clearly see the difference. Don't leave Papa Iger. Well, yeah, but I will say this, Rob. I have been accused of being pretty harsh on Bob Chapek. That might be fair. That might be fair to say. So much so that I've even gotten emails saying, hey, man, you've been pretty brutal to Bob. And yeah, I have, but I feel that's been justified based on the issues we've been talking about. But in Bob Chapek's defense, being a great public speaker like Bob Iger is a master public speaker, a master communicator. It's not the most important job of a CEO. The most important job is leading the company. So while right now, I'm not a big fan of Bob Chapek, the CEO of Disney. I do not particularly think he's done a very good job. I think I am justified in feeling that way. I'm not saying it's hopeless. I'm not saying I'm not cheering for him. I'm not saying I don't think he can get better. I am hoping he gets better. I am cheering for him. I am. But to this point, I think he's done a pretty terrible job to this point. But that being said, I don't take him as being a terrible public speaker as necessarily a big negative or a knock on his ability to potentially turn this thing around and be a good CEO for Disney. But yeah, I don't want Papa Iger to go anywhere. Anyway, Rob, what's your response to that? What do you feel about that?
Well, who wants him to go anywhere? I mean, look, I just feel that there's two things going on here. There's corporate culture, and there's people that work their way up in that corporate culture. And when I was working in home video for Disney, Bob Chapek was a very respected executive. But Bob Iger, if you read his book especially, he has a much different set of skills that he developed. And a lot of those have to do with dealing with talent and things like that Bob Chapek just doesn't have. And unfortunately, so often with corporate culture, they look at what's on paper. You know, it's like people with Ivy League business school educations get hired by the studios because that's what a corporation would expect you to hire. Does that mean, though, that those people have the best skill set for the entertainment business, which is a business that's built on relationships and trust? Hard to say. But obviously, I think Bob Chapek coming out of the gate has not had a good first year of his tenure at running Disney. So...
yeah, and look, again, you know, you want to see a big difference between Bob Chapek and Bob Iger? When Bob Iger was in power, I mean, technically he still is in power. He's the chairman of the board. But I mean, when Bob Iger was still CEO, okay, when he needed somebody to run the movie empire of Disney, when he needed a general to look after all the movies that Disney was going to do with all of their movie companies, he didn't go out and get a banker to run it. He didn't go out and get some numbers guy to run it. He went and found Alan Horn, who was enjoying retirement, who is a movie professional, who has done a lot for the movie business and understands film and how to run a studio. And Bob Iger went to Alan Horn and said, Alan, I need you to put down that Mai Tai, man. I need you to come home from the beach. I need you to come out of retirement. Alan, need you to come out of retirement, buddy. I need you to come because I need a general that can run our movie empire. That's what Bob Iger did. Bob Chapek has been putting numbers people in charge of people like Alan Horn. He's putting numbers guys and bankers in charge of people like Kevin Feige. And anyway, sorry, I don't want to go off on my whole dystopian dissertation about how bad Bob Chapek has been again. By the way, Disney just invited me to the Eternals world premiere, which I am shocked to get the invite. Consider, I can't believe they let me still come to these things. But anyway, it's I'm not going to go off on that again. By the way, I just want to point this out. One of our viewers, iPod97, wrote in the live chat just talking about Venom. He said, hey, John, I'm an assistant manager at one of the largest cinema chains in the world, probably Regal, and I must say Venom was the busiest we've been all year. The lines from the register all the way out the door, which is always good to hear. Good to hear that, iPod. Thanks for sharing that experience, man. All right, let's move on here. Next up, where do we leave off there? Was that Dr. No, that was Louis. Sorry, it was Hector. Oh, okay, next up. Sam Melmastrand writes, hey, John, I'm a first-time commenter. Good to have you here, man. Thanks for commenting. And I'm sending this from Vancouver Island. I love British Columbia. I'm commenting because with all the talk about who all is going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm concerned that it could possibly get too bloated and focus that it will become too bloated and too much substance and less story. Love to hear your thoughts. Have a great day. Rob, I've been talking about this a lot lately. It is not a matter of, there's no problem with a movie being overcrowded if you use the population of the movie correctly. I go back to the first X-Men movie. You had Charles Xavier, you had Magneto, you had Mystique, you had Toad, you had Sabretooth, you had Cyclops, you had Jean Grey, you had Rogue, you had Storm, you had Wolverine, you had the Senator, you have the on and on and on and on. You look at Infinity War. Hell, look at Endgame. Well, Infinity War, just look at, there were 5 villains, Rob, all with big key blockbuster kind of scenes. All these big scenes. Obviously you had Thanos, but then you also had his 4 children. You had Maw, you had Proxima Midnight, you had, I keep forgetting the name of the other 2, but each one of them had their own big showpiece action sequence, some of them multiple ones. Each one of them had their own individual storylines going on. Maw with Iron Man, Proxima Midnight with her fight against Captain America and Black Widow. It's just, you had all that. 5 villains and how many heroes? But it didn't feel overcrowded because they used them correctly. You can have 10 characters in Spider-Man No Way Home. If you use them right, it's not an issue. And that's what it comes down to. If you use them wrong, 1 character is too much. If you use them right, 15 characters can be handled no problem. I don't know, Rob, how would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I would agree with what you said. It all comes down to character, story, and screenplay. And I think, look, with the premise of what they're setting up, which is kind of a riff on the there's a storyline in the Spider-Man comics. What was it? Wasn't called One Fine Day. Forget the actual title. Something Fine Day or something. It's not like these characters have to be in the movie for 20 or 30 minutes. They might have one great scene or one great scene when all 3 of them together, or it really depends. I mean, if you've got a great story, it will support that. I mean, we love look at X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of X-Men in the opening scene fighting the Sentinels. And some of them we'd never seen before. And it still worked. And I think it's really how it's handled. I'm not worried about having too many people. I'm curious to see how it's going to play out.
All right.
I think they've been trolling us, by the way. I think they have done. I think Marvel and Sony have teamed up to troll all of us. I think we don't even. I don't even think they've scratched the surface as to what's in this movie.
All right. Next up, Mayo writes, hey, John, I just saw Venom last night and I thought it was pretty good. The one critique I had was I thought there wasn't a lot of character growth compared to the first movie. I know you probably disagree, but would love to know what you think. No, you know what? I'm not going to disagree. I agree with you. There wasn't a lot of character development, and it's like they took the characters from where they were and then just introduced them into a new story. Now, there was a little bit of development with the relationship between Venom and Eddie, and I won't go into the specifics for those who haven't seen the movie. So there was a little bit, but there wasn't a ton. It really was more about the immediate situation and the story of that unfolding there. So yeah, I agree with you. There was also, for me, a couple of scenes that didn't work in the movie. For those of you who've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I wasn't a big fan of the rave scene, and I wasn't a big fan of the preparing breakfast scene. I liked almost every other scene, but yeah, I got some issues with it too. So that's why, I like Suicide Squad more. I like Shang-Chi more, but I still had a hell of a lot of fun with this movie. By the way, our friend Willie A sends in a $20 super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Willie. Appreciate that, man, very much. Thanks, dude. All right. Next up here, we go to I Am Conflicted, who writes 1 of 4. Hey, John. So I'm very conflicted. On one hand, I love all of David Chase's works. The Sopranos is one of my all-time favorites, and I really enjoyed The Many Saints of Newark. However, which, by the way, completely flopped at the box office. Thank you again to Warner Brothers for putting it day and date on HBO. Anyway, however, as a black man myself, I can't deny how uncomfortable it makes me feel when I see every movie/show Chase has done that depicts black people. They're always shown as less than. On The Sopranos, they are always treated as either horrible people or like dogs. With Many Saints of Newark, they are looked at like despicable people. I have never watched anything from Chase that depicts black people as equals or better. I love his work, but I hate how he shows black people in his films. I get he is telling a story, but not one positive depiction. I've often felt the same with Martin Scorsese films. Most of his films depict black people as the stereotypical drug dealers or criminals, and his films are always so racist. Am I wrong to be offended by this? Well, listen, I am conflicted. I will say this. I am not ever going to tell you what you should or should not feel about something, okay? However you feel is just how you feel. You don't choose how you feel. Like when your hand touches an oven element or a stove element, you don't choose for that to hurt. It just hurts. Your body reacts that way. It just hurts. When you walk into a chilly room, you don't choose to feel cold. Your body reacts. It tells you you're cold. You don't choose how you feel about something. So I'm never going to tell somebody they're wrong for feeling a certain way about something. I will say this though. Let me throw this out there for you to make a part of your thought process on this, if it's applicable to you at all. I would say this. There is a distinction to be made, I think, between how a filmmaker or a storyteller depicts something versus how their characters view and see things. You got to remember the story of The Sopranos is told through their perspective and how, in all of its flaws, and how they see the world and all of its flaws. Their perception is flawed and twisted and biased and colored by their background and all that kind of stuff, as it is for all of us. So I wouldn't say that the storyteller is telling his interpretation of things. I think he's telling us a story and telling us and showing us how his characters see things. Because I remember I Am Conflicted. Not that long ago, I was having discussions with some other people about should we feel, we being me and other people who are Italian. For those of you who don't know, I'm Italian. My real name is Giovanni, by the way. Whether or not we should be offended because all The Sopranos does, Rob, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Sopranos, but if your only understanding of the Italian culture was watching The Sopranos, you would think that every freaking Italian in this world is a bottom-dwelling, murderous, criminal cretin who is racist, misogynistic, and vile, and every Italian in the world is somehow connected to the mafia.
Wait, I thought that was all true.
Oh, it might be. It might be. I mean, it might be for me. I'm just saying maybe you shouldn't paint all Italians. But I remember having this description or this discussion with some friends of mine about should we as Italians be offended by the show, because the way it depicts Italians is whatever. But like for me, and again, I'm only speaking for me personally, while that is all that show depicts Italians as, it wasn't saying that this is what all Italians in the film are. These are just these characters and how they function and how they act and how they see the world. It's not a commentary by the filmmaker of all Italians everywhere are like this, although if all you watch was Sopranos, that's what you would think Italians are. But I understood that he was just telling a story about these characters and all their flaws and how they function and how they see the world. And so, for me personally, as an Italian, I don't get offended by it because I understand we're watching a movie about these characters. I'm not watching a movie about the entire ethnicity of Italian people in the world. So that's just me. How you feel about it, I am conflicted, is up for each individual to really look at and examine and decide how they feel for themselves and just react to how it is they naturally feel about it. So I'm not going to tell you how you should feel. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for feeling that way. I just am introducing to you some of my personal mechanisms for how I think through it. That's all. But anyway, Rob, how would you answer that question?
Well, I think our viewer has a really good point about this, but I would also say this. I think in a way, you're supposed to think that there's racism happening. And the way these cultures, I mean, these are definitely subsets and subcultures of people. And the fact that, especially in New York has a long history, like when the Irish immigrated to New York, people hated the Irish. And what you're seeing is a subset of a culture, not just Italian, not just New York, but a subset of even the mafia. And they were these are people that are racist. And I think the depiction of how they deal with not just blacks, but also the Jews and other things that happened, they're trying to be as realistic as possible. But you're supposed to recognize that there's racism in this story. You're supposed to recognize that these people they're racists. And it's part of who they are as those characters as they're depicted. And I think just like they're not condoning criminal behavior here, I don't think they're condoning racism either. They're putting up a mirror to it, and you're supposed to realize, well, this isn't really the way we should be treating one another. But in this particular subculture that they're dealing with, that is the way people treated one another. And it's not supposed to be a depiction of the way, I mean, are they supposed to be, well, they'll commit crimes, but oh wait, they're really open and with their all the people that are different from them, they're going to be nice to them. No. Racism is as much a part of that culture as the criminal behavior, and you're supposed to recognize all of that behavior as not good.
Good point. All right. Thanks for writing that in. I am concerned. You raise a really, really valid point.
Good question. I really like that question.
And it's something that we should wrestle with more. So thanks for writing that in, man. All right. Next up, we've got Venom 2 writes, the Rotten Tomato score for Venom 2 sits at 59%, critics scores, but when you go deeper on the top critics, it was 52, which is only 7% difference. They didn't like it. Wait a minute. Time out, Venom 2. Yes, they did. I don't know if you understand how Rotten Tomatoes works. 59% means the majority of critics like the movie. So you can't say the majority of critics like the movie and then say the critics didn't like the movie. They actually did. The majority of them didn't like the first one because the first one, only 30% of critics gave it a positive review. Okay. So you can say that. You can say that about the first film. You can say the critics didn't like the first Venom because only 30% of the critics gave it a positive review. In this case, while it's not a great number, I'm not pretending that it is, but the reality is at 59%, that means the majority, not a huge majority, but the majority of the critics gave the movie a positive review. Most critics liked it, not by a huge majority, but most did. So anyway, they didn't like it, so you're incorrect about that. The audience score is 85%. Not great numbers, but still did great at the box office. John, why do you think critics hated this movie so much? Again, Venom 2, you're completely misunderstanding what these numbers mean. The reality is the majority of the critics did like the movie. The majority did. The minority of them didn't. But for why did the minority of critics, for those critics that didn't like the movie, why didn't they like it? Well, all film is subjective. Everybody's going to have their own opinions. For me, it comes down to this. I believe that if you are on board with the nature of the personality they give Venom in these movies and the nature of the relationship between Eddie and Brock, if that works for you, you're probably going to like these movies. And if that doesn't work for you, you're not going to like these movies. If you don't like the personality they give Venom, you're not going to like these movies. So every individual film viewer, whether they're a critic or not, is going to have their own reasons for why they do or do not like something. Everyone will. And that includes critics. But again, I think if you want to put a big umbrella over everything, I'll say it again. If you like the personality they give Venom, you're going to like these movies, I think. And if you don't like the personality they give Venom, you probably won't. So that's kind of my take on that. But again, Venom, be very, 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 very clear here. The critics do like this movie. At least a majority of them do. So it's all about interpreting how Rotten Tomatoes works. Anyway, okay, next up. Let's see. Clay Woodley writes, "Hey, John, love your show. Thank you so much, Clay. I finally saw Free Guy, good on ya, last week, and I loved it. Really funny and some really good action. Hoping to do a double header with Venom 2 and No Time to Die next week. And we got Halloween and Dune coming out this month as well. I'm excited." Rob and I have been talking for a long time that this month is stacked. And by the way, Rob, I just want to point something out. Free Guy, in its 8th week of release, it is still number 6 at the box office, and it's available on home video now. It became available on home video in its 8th week of release, and it's still in the top 10. It's at number 6 at the box office. It made more than The Many Saints of Newark, by the way. So good on... Congrats again to all the people involved, including good Canadian kid Ryan Reynolds, to all the people involved with Free Guy, because that movie is just a whole shit ton of fun. I had such a good time watching that movie. All right, next up. Brightburns 1985 writes, "I wonder which Bond gets more crap nowadays, George Lazenby, Timothy Dalton, or Daniel Craig. By the way, I hear Majesty's Secret Service was the best Fleming book. I don't know that any of them get a lot of crap. I mean, George Lazenby, Rob, and Timothy Dalton, you know, they don't get talked a lot about when it comes to Bond. Everybody focuses on Sean Connery, Roger Moore, obviously Daniel Craig, to some degree even more Pierce Brosnan. I mean, so yeah, they don't get a lot of attention, but I don't hear a lot of people getting like crapping on George Lazenby or Timothy Dalton or Daniel Craig for that matter. Have you heard a lot of that? I haven't.
Adrian Iscaria is not a fan of George Lazenby or
Adrian's a buddy of ours.
Service.
Adrian's a buddy of ours.
He is a producer. But no, I mean, there's a lot of people that Pierce Brosnan, I really do believe that James Bond is a product of when you came to the franchise.
Right.
And there's a lot of people where Pierce Brosnan, you know, Bond hadn't been around for 6 years since License to Kill in 89. And when GoldenEye came out in 95, there was a lot of people that saw Bond in the theater for the very first time, and it was Pierce Brosnan. And that movie's pretty damn exciting. And I think there's a lot of people that like Pierce Brosnan's tenure. I mean, yeah, some of his movies might not have been the greatest, other than, though, Die Another Day, which is really not a good Bond film. But his other 3 films I thought were very respectable. I liked them. So, you know, now it's just everyone's talking about Daniel Craig in relation to Roger Moore and Sean Connery, which I think is a little unfair. And I also thought Timothy Dalton, although he's only in 2 movies, I really like Living Daylights, and I thought he was great as Bond.
And he's great in Doom Patrol, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
Yes, he is.
Great in Doom Patrol. By the way, GoldenEye, fantastic Pierce Brosnan. Fantastic Pierce Brosnan Bond film. By the way, our friend John Demoto sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, John. Appreciate that, man. All right, next up. Double Toe 7 writes, "Just watched Bond, absolutely loved it. Craig's best performance by far, and he's now become my favorite Bond. Great cast and score, especially Ana de Armas, who was amazing." And Rob, I hear through the grapevine you're going to go see James Bond tomorrow. How excited are you for that?
Dude, I can't tell you. I mean, you know, Bond has been, whether a Bond movie turns out to be great or not so great, I just love the Bond franchise, and seeing a Bond movie is always a treat. And it's been 6 years since Spectre came out, and I'm pumped, man. I got great tickets to see it in IMAX, at the Chinese theater, and actually, it's the second time I bought good seats for this film. So I'm very excited to see it for the first time. I think I've spent more money on not seeing a movie than I've ever done in my life. I don't think I've ever spent as much money and not seen a film before. So finally, I get to see it. I can't wait.
All right. Next up, Minute Man Sam writes, "Hey, John and Rob, or today's guest. Thank you for being a bright light in dark times. Have you guys seen the Netflix miniseries Midnight Mass? I still have not. Wow, it's a near horror masterpiece. It's slow burn, but terrifying and shocking. One of Netflix's best series. What are your thoughts?" Again, Rob, I was invited to watch an early screening of Midnight Mass weeks ago, and I just never got around to it. So I wasn't able to participate in that early screening. That's fine. And I've meant to watch it, but Rob, I've now had several people writing into the show to say they've watched Midnight Mass and they really, really liked it. So I have not had a chance to check it out yet. Have you? If not, are you excited about this? What are you hearing about it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what am I hear what everybody hears. I don't have any conduit. I mean, look, I think we're living in a great time where my default position, John, is to be excited about things. Don't you think we should be?
All right. Len Art writes, "Hey fellas, I don't always agree with you all, but I always respect your objective, non-biased opinions. With that said, thanks for suggesting Mayor of Easttown. It's a great series, but do you think it'll get multiple seasons like The Killing did? Thanks." Well, Rob, you and I have been raving about Mayor of Easttown. It was not on my radar at all. And then I watched it and I'm like, I think probably the best performance Kate Winslet has ever given. And that says a lot about her very decorated career. And when that show ends and the way it ends, I was dying for season 2, but it does look like it was a limited 1-season series. I have heard nothing about them doing another one, which sucks, but I respect it. Rob, have you heard anything else? And would you want to see a season 2 of this?
I've read a lot about with the creators of the show, and it was always designed to be a single season limited series. But John, as you always point out, winning changes everything.
Yeah.
What do you say? Winning
cures everything.
Winning cures everything. I think, look, obviously with the recognition that it received with the Emmys, it's top shelf TV. It doesn't get much better. And Kate Winslet's performance was just one for the ages. So I could see them bringing it back for another season, although I think it would be difficult because how often do these kinds of stories happen to one person? I mean, unless you're John McClane, when these kinds of things keep happening to you in this small town. Maybe if she moved away as a result of what happened and went to another town. But I think it would be hard. I think the creators know that this is a special show and they'd be hard-pressed to come up with something, a sequel. But I could see the same creative team doing something else together that might not be the same characters, the same situation, but maybe a whole different story with a whole different milieu, because I think these people, God, they really created some entertainment that doesn't come along often.
Yeah, I would watch the hell out of a season 2 if they ever did one, but I don't think it's
Me
coming.
too.
All right, Brazilian Dude writes, "Just saw Titane, Palme d'Or winner, in theaters per Rob's recommendation. Hard to tell if I've watched the most fucked up movie ever or the most heartwarming movie ever. Let's just say I have never seen a movie like this and probably never will. Loved it." I have not seen it. Rob, but you've been talking about it. I mean,
dude, it opened this weekend. Neon put it out. It's my number one movie to see. And I got inundated with work because we have a foreign release of Tango Shalom coming out, and I had to do some things for that. So I couldn't go to the movies this weekend. I had to work, but, tomorrow I'm just going to go on a movie binge and I'm going to see as many things as I can. Even I'm hoping to see Many Saints in Newark in a theater. I don't know if that'll happen, but I can't wait to see Titane. And I've heard exactly the same thing from everyone who's seen it. Cannot wait.
All right. Next up, Pop Sky Baby writes, "Somebody asked what to do when Disney Plus is unavailable. My solution, recut the shows as movies. The movie version also promotes upcoming seasons. Imagine watching The Mandalorian on the big screen as 2 movies before the next season begins. Thoughts?" I'll be honest with you, Pop Sky Baby, I hate that. I hate that idea. And the people who would hate it the most are the actual creators would hate that. They developed what's the word I'm looking for? They imagined and developed and envisioned and then created these things as, an 8-part story series, right? To cut it down to 2 hours into a movie would be a disservice to the storytellers. It would be a disservice to the audience. So no, look, the answer to this is simple. If you're Disney, license Mandalorian season 1 out to another broadcaster in a country where Disney Plus is not available. That's simple. And then end the license once you make Disney Plus available in those territories. It's simple. So no, Rob, I do not believe taking those creators' work and then butchering them down to just a 2-hour movie when they were conceived of and created to be an 8-part thing. I don't think that's the answer. What do you think?
Well, there is precedent. I mean, they did used to, like, back in the 70s, they cut, like, Space 1999. They'd take episodes and cut them into movies, 2-hour movies. They did that with Galactica. And theoretically, you could do 2 long-form Mandalorian movies by just cutting the 4 episodes together into, 2 or 2.5-hour film and releasing them that way. But you'd still be releasing all of it. You're not cutting it down. But I think, like what you just said, yeah, I mean, why not license those? It's not like piracy. The people can't download these things if they want on BitTorrent or whatever, Pirate Bay, whatever's still around. That's how old I am. But I think you're right. I think licensing these out to places that don't have Disney Plus is the way to go. And when Disney Plus finally gets there, you revoke the license.
See, I mean, but what you're proposing is something different. And I agree with you. Like, if you could take Mandalorian and break it into 2 movies, like not one for season 1 and one for season 2, and put all of it in movie and put it all out, I could see that. But the idea of taking season 1 and editing it down to a 2 hour and 20-minute cut of it and calling that a movie and then doing the same to season 2, I wouldn't be for that. But that other approach, I could see them doing it. But again, the best solution is just license the content like CBS All Access did for their Star Trek stuff. License it out to other broadcasters in those territories until your service is available in those countries too. It's the best thing.
It's the way to go.
All right. Next up, the Super Korean writes, "Hey, John and Rob. So yesterday I went to go see Venom and I was really enjoying it, but 45 minutes in and I had to take care of a family emergency. I didn't want to leave, but I had to. After all, family is the most important thing. Has this ever happened to you?" Well, I can say this, and Rob, you probably remember this. I have never had to leave a movie, like outright leave for a family emergency, but it was during Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Skyscraper. I was in my first viewing of Skyscraper. And this was when, for those of us who knew John Schnepp, when we were all learning about John Schnepp's health situation. And the public didn't know about it yet. But Rob, I remember that night, you, me, and Harloff were texting back and forth rather furiously. So I positioned myself in the theater to sit in the upper level right beside the exit. And so nobody was around me, thankfully, because I would have handled myself differently if there were people right around me, but there wasn't people right around me. So whenever I would feel the phone vibrate in my pocket, I would step out into the hallway, check, we would go back and forth, respond about whatever new information any of us were learning and things like that. Then I would sit back down, buzz go off, step out. So I missed a lot of the movie. But I remember that night. So Rob, I'm sure you remember that evening as well. And have you ever had another experience like that where, you literally had to leave a film because of an emergency or something like that?
I did actually, but I hadn't actually stepped into the movie. I was with Michael Davis. We were going into the ArcLight, who directed Shoot 'Em Up. We were going in and I got a phone call from my grandfather in Palm Springs. He lived in Palm Springs half the year, and he said that he had had a heart attack and he was in the hospital, and could I come out and see him? And I turned right around. I didn't even get my ticket refunded. I said to Michael, I got to go. I jumped in my car and I drove straight from Hollywood to Palm Springs. And it turned out that was the last time when I saw my grandfather. That night was the last time I spoke to him, because what I found out was he was 97. He had a heart attack and the septum of his heart had torn open. So oxygenated and unoxygenated blood were mixing. Normally they would open someone up and fix it, but for a 97-year-old man, they would not put him under general anesthesia. So I came back the next morning and held his hand until he actually passed away.
And you've mentioned that story to me before, man. And that's hard. So that happens, man. All right.
But if I had not gone, if I'd said, well, I'm going to go see a movie, I'll come see you tomorrow, that I would not have been able to speak with him.
All right, let's get one more question in here while Rob is still with us. Jay Wintz writes, the last Ted Lasso episode that came out last week broke me. Fuck Nate with his ungrateful ass. He's been pissing me off all season, but to turn on Ted, the man who showed him nothing but love and helped him get the job, and to see Ted not mad but heartbroken broke me. Yeah, listen, I remember watching that, and I remember Ann and I talking about that. I have just hated that character, Nate's character, the whole year. I have hated that character the whole year, because I think all of us know, and Rob, I'm going to prevent myself from going off on an unprofessional rant, but all of us have known some pissy, ungrateful little snot that we have given an opportunity to, or whatever, and they turn into a fucking little devil. We have all known those people. I am not an exception to that. I have known people like that. And watching that unfold on Ted Lasso this whole season has elicited a lot of emotions and anger in me too, because we've all known those things, and those people. Anyway, Rob, I don't know if you're all caught up on Ted Lasso. Yes. Where we're at. You are all caught up, but man, it is just, I will say this though, dude, that the ending of that last episode with Ted getting the text and everything, it just made me just drool for the finale. It just made me drool for the finale this week. I know, what are your thoughts?
I'm right there with you. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the finale, but it's true. It's very interesting. Like, you think that when you do something, when you do work, you think that other people are doing, they if they want to work with you, or the whole point of them coming to work with you is because they understand and respect what it is you're trying to do. And then so you bring them in and everything like, hey, isn't this great? And then it turns out that their interests are, let's say, more personal than the work itself. That's more self-aggrandizing and things. That's always disappointing, because I always err on the side of, well, we're all here to do a cool job, and if we're all going to work together, let's have a good time. And that's not always the case.
Anyway, Rob, it is always a good time hanging out and talking about all these things with you. Thanks for being here again today. We'll, of course, see you again tomorrow. But in the meantime, dude, where can people follow you and all of your goodness online?
I just want to thank you, by the way, on live on the show. You got a gift for me, and your wife dropped it off yesterday, which was a Moon Knight statue. And everyone knows how much I love Moon Knight. And boy, I can't thank you enough for that.
Do you have it right there by you?
You know what? I don't. It's still in the house. I didn't bring it out here to open up because I didn't want to.
I have still never seen it out of the box. So you got to show us tomorrow.
Oh,
on the show,
rest assured, John, you'll probably see it tomorrow. You will see it. It's very cool. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only, the great writer, director, producer, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. And he'll, of course, be back again tomorrow. But we still have some time here, guys. So let's keep going through more of your comments and questions that you guys have sent in. Okay, next up, we got Justin, who writes, this question is pertaining to the recent story about, I can take these off now. This question is relating to the recent story about the Friday the 13th screenwriter who won back the rights to his property. In a story earlier this year, you discussed about how we as consumers do not actually own the movies that we buy digitally or even on hard copy. If the studios can say that we do not actually own the movies that we purchase, do you think that from that viewpoint, it would be fair to say that the studios do not necessarily own the properties they... No, those are two completely non-identical different situations altogether. But anyway, do not necessarily own the properties they make movies from, and that those rights should be retained by the creators. No, that's a completely different scenario. Because, when we're talking about... There is a law in copyright law that says after a certain amount of time, the intellectual rights of a property will go back to the original creators. But then there's a whole bunch of asterisks beside that. If they're employees, that doesn't imply. If it's a work for hire, what were the actual terms and conditions of the work for hire contract? There's a whole bunch of caveats and asterisks that go along with this that will make it applicable in some situations and not applicable in others. With the whole thing about when you buy a video, the terms and conditions that are put in there that we as consumers agree to by purchasing them is that we don't actually own the movie. Like when you buy a DVD, you own the physical disc. That disc is yours, but the content on that DVD is not owned by you. You have a perpetual license to watch it and enjoy it. But for example, you own that DVD, but that does not give you a right to copy the movie and then distribute the copy of that online. The movie doesn't belong to you. I know you paid the $19.99 to buy the disc, but technically speaking, all you and I own at that point is the physical disc. We do not own the intellectual property that is then on the disc. That is still owned by the studio. So that is a completely different scenario. That is a completely different scenario than what is going on under copyright law with intellectual property rights between studios and original creators, be they employees, work for hire, and what the nature of the contracts of those work for hire. So you can't compare the two. They are very, very different things. I understand why you'd ask, but just, they are completely different scenarios. All right. Next up, Jack Lumbers writes, one of two. I saw Dear Evan Hansen. I saw a review and I kind of agree with the age thing. Either case, someone who looks younger for Evan or cast all the high school students to look older. That's actually a good point. Somebody maybe should have done that. The makeup job they did to make him look younger was remarkably terrible. As for the actual movie, the musical number was great. I understand why they kept Platt. The plot was terrible. It felt like I was watching Snake Eyes. I understand a white lie and in the moment lie, but the depth of his lie went is something else. Yeah, listen, my whole point of view on the whole Dear Evan Hansen situation and the age of Ben Platt and all that kind of stuff is this. The issue is not how old is Ben Platt. The issue is how old does Ben Platt look? That's different. Tom Holland is only a couple of years younger than Ben Platt, but the difference is Tom Holland looks a lot younger than Ben Platt. And I get the idea of taking the original stage guy and putting him in the show, but if using that guy in the movie is going to constantly pull your audience out of the movie every time they see him because they're jarred by how much older he looks than all these other supposed high school students, then that's doing a disservice to your movie. I understand the romantic idea of having the original stage guy doing the movie. I understand that he is a bonkers talented singer and he can belt out those tunes like nobody else. I get all that, but you have to know well enough as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, that if by having him in the movie, you're pulling the audience out of their suspension of disbelief every time he's on screen, then that's going to negatively affect the audience's experience with the movie and ultimately negatively affect your movie. And it's something they should have been aware of. And I know it's too bad Aaron's not here to debate that with me, but there you go. All right, next up, Jonathan writes, where are we at here? Jonathan writes, I think you've underestimated how many people find the casting of Mario ridiculous. I think you're probably overestimating it. It's not that we don't like Pratt. He's a great actor, but you do realize they have the actual voice actor of Mario as a cameo. What are your thoughts? Irrelevant, completely irrelevant. I don't give a shit that you've got the original voice of Mario from the video games. I don't give a shit. I really don't. That doesn't mean he'd be a great lead voice guy for an actual, narrative long form movie at all. I don't give a shit about that. So I really don't care. I really don't care that you got the original voice of Mario. Doesn't matter one squirt of piss. And I know that's going to piss some people off that I think that, but deal with it. That's what I think. You got to get a great performer. And the reality is, Chris Pratt, as exhibited in the Lego animated movie, Chris Pratt brings a lot of life to a character with his vocal performance. I got to give him that. I totally got to give him that. Does that mean I would have picked Chris Pratt to do the voice of Mario? Probably wouldn't have been my first choice, but he's really good at this. And as an Italian, I don't know. Maybe, because who did they get to be Luigi again? Was it not Daniel Day-Lewis? That would have been all right. I would have been okay with that. But Day, what's his name? From Always Sunny in Philadelphia, something Day. I keep not Dan Day, not Tim Day. What's the damn guy's? Charlie Day. Thank you, Fanjecture. Fanjecture got my back. Charlie Day. I like Chris Pratt and I like Charlie Day as Mario and Luigi. I don't know. Couldn't you have found somebody Italian to do the voice of these really over the top Italian characters? Whatever. I'll live with it. It's fine. I'm not going to make a big issue out of it. So yeah, would Charlie Day and Chris Pratt have been my actual original choices? No, they wouldn't have been. But and by the way, Charlie Day also was a voice in the Lego movie and was also really good in that. So I'm okay with it. Oh, and I totally forgot about that. Tharuka also pointed out in the live chat about Chris Pratt did a great job with his vocal performance in Onward. I really like Onward, by the way. Onward was unfortunate enough that it kind of came out right around when the pandemic was happening and it really got trounced by it. But Onward, I thought, was a really good movie. I enjoyed Onward a lot. It was basically a Dungeons and Dragons game played out on screen. So obviously I'm a little bit thinged for that. But also my wife was in tears the whole movie because it's about these guys who lost their dad. And my wife had lost her dad only a couple of years earlier. And so my wife's watching this movie, which we love because it's kind of Dungeons and Dragons based. It's wonderfully written, really has a lot of heart and a lot of humor, but also was really touching very close to home because my wife had just recently lost her dad. And so we were laughing and crying and all that kind of stuff. But again, so is Pratt the first guy I would have picked to play Mario? No. Do I think he'll do a good job? I would put money on it that he's probably going to do a good job. All right. Next up. Let's see. BK Dan writes, John, just realized that Campea and Burnett equals the Siskel and Ebert on YouTube's. I don't know if, I used to be told that with me and like some other guys when I was back doing the movie blog. I was told that, people said me and Schnepp were the new Siskel and Ebert. Now it's me and Rob. I don't think anybody replaces Siskel and Ebert. And plus, I don't know that those guys liked each other off camera, and Rob and I actually do. So that's one big difference for us. All right. Let's see. Scott Rudin writes, hey, John, I love Venom. It was great. It's definitely in my top 5 of 2021, but what the hell do I know? I love Fast 9 and hated Free Guy. Oh, that's unfortunate. So I'm always in the minority when it comes to films. Longtime listener, I rarely agree with you. Hey, agreeing is not what we're here to do. We're here to have fun conversation, and all film is subjective. If you love Fast 9, awesome. You're not alone. There are other people who love Fast 9. I mean, I hated it, but that doesn't mean I want you to hate it. If you liked it, that's great. And if you didn't like Free Guy, oh, well, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, but no movies for everybody. So don't worry about that, Scott. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, man. All right, next up. Let's see. Marcus writes, hey, John and whomever. Well, we just missed Rob, unfortunately. What's going on with Danish cinema lately? Another round, Riders of Justice, which was really interesting, and Shorta. These are some of the best films I've seen in the past few years. If you can get past the fact that they speak kind of funny, that's a little racist. I highly recommend. No, listen, one of the things I've found, especially as the internet became a bigger part of entertainment is that more and more people are getting the opportunity to view international cinema. I mean, Korean cinema, a lot of other Asian cinema, Danish cinema, Russian cinema has been getting a lot of attention lately too. And that's, before you just never would have had access to ever discover those types of movies now, right? But today, with a lot of the streaming services and a big need for content and all that kind of stuff, you're getting more and more people who are being exposed to and being able to see a lot of content that they never would have had access to before in the past and that they never would have had a chance to see. But today there are. And now also because of the internet, there's mechanisms for people to spread the word about those things. Riders of Justice was something I never even heard of. I heard because some people had access to it that they never would have had access to before. And then they were able to hop on social media and spread the word about it. And that's how I first kind of heard about it myself. So it's really a sign of the changing times. It's a sign of the changing times, which I think is good for everybody. Okay. Next up. Sorry, I'm getting all mixed up here. Next up, we go to, that was Jack, BK, Scott, Rudin. That was Marcus. Now we get up to Andy Hong, who writes, fun fact, the Dear Evan Hansen movie was released on Ben Platt's 28th birthday. It's perfectly fitting, yet it kind of gives more reason as to why he shouldn't have been cast as a high schooler. Again, it has nothing to do with how old he is. It's about how old he looks. You can put a 30-year-old playing a high schooler if they look like a high schooler, at least to a degree. And just Ben Platt didn't. And you're right, the makeup just made the situation even worse. Andy also writes, I'm glad that Scarlett Johansson got the upper hand on Disney. If Disney had somehow come out on top, they would have screwed over one of the biggest actresses out there, and this would just enable them to feel free to screw over just about anyone in the future. And yeah, that's okay. Look, here's the thing. The whole issue, Disney was never going to win that. There was just no way they were ever going to win that. It's because it was black and white. She had a contract with them that they signed on to that creates a legally binding agreement. And when Disney violated that agreement, there was no way they were ever going to win. There was just no universe that they were ever going to win. And that's why I said from day one of the Scarlett Johansson situation, I said from day one, there is only one way this ends. It's only going to end with Disney writing a big mouse-eared shaped check to Scarlett Johansson. And it is never going to go to trial. It'll be settled long before trial, and it'll end with a big fat check that Disney's going to have to write to Scarlett Johansson. And that's what happened. According to Deadline, they cut her a $40 million check. And they probably could have paid her less if they had just talked to her and her representatives and come to the negotiation table and made a deal with her before it ever went to court. They probably could have given her $20 million and that would have settled everything before it ever became a court case. But they brushed her off. Then they slagged her in the media. They tried to throw her under the bus publicly. And that ended up costing them an additional $20 million to do. So they lost, they needed to lose, they had to lose, and they never were going to win because there was a contract and they broke it. And it's just as simple as that. What they were thinking about ever letting that come to the point where Scarlett Johansson had to file a lawsuit, yet another big strike against Bob Chapek and his failed leadership so far. So far, I'm still cheering for him. I want him to learn from this and become better. But another example of the failed leadership of Bob Chapek at Disney so far. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, next up. Andy Hong also writes, when I got a notification for your first After Dark video, I seriously thought, is Campea talking about or doing porn? By the way, I love your After Dark intro so much. Don't change it and keep talking about alcohol, drugs, and casual sex with one or many partners. All right, thanks a lot for saying that in. And yes, I've been having fun doing it. Of course, All After Dark is just a companion video that we do live. That's it. It's just a normal companion video that we do live, but it's normally later at night. So we call it After Dark, and we just have a little bit of fun with the wording of it all. That's all. All right. Next up, we got Dangerous D, who writes, "Hey, John, I was wondering, whatever happened to Sandra Bullock? I haven't seen her in any movies recently. The last time I saw her was in Ocean's 8 in 2018. Has she quietly retired, or is she just taking some time off? Is she going to be in a film that's coming soon?" Well, listen, all you need to do, if you ever wonder that, is just hop on IMDb and just look up Sandra Bullock. She's got at minimum 3 films coming out, including one called Bullet Train. Actually, give me a second here. She's got one called Bullet Train coming out. Maybe if I spelled her name right. Sandra Bullock. Now, she's been actively producing lately. She's been doing a lot of producing lately, which is good for her. But as far as, so she's got The Unforgivable coming. She's got a movie called The Lost City of D coming. And then she's got this one called Bullet Train, which actually is kind of amazing. And listen to the other people she's in it with. Michael Shannon, amazing. Brad Pitt, amazing. Zazie Beetz, amazing. Aaron Taylor Johnson, amazing. Logan Lerman, who we do not see enough of these days because I think he's really good. Logan Lerman, it's a great looking cast. So Andrew Koji, by the way, from HBO's Warrior, and he played Storm Shadow, and he was the best part of Snake Eyes. As well. Brian Tyree Hill is in it. Masioka is in it. I mean, it's just a great cast. So yeah, she's got a lot coming out. She's got a lot coming up. All right. Next up, Dangerous D also writes, where do we go with that? Hey, John. Well, DC Fandom is just a few days away, and I, for one, can't wait for it. I'm expecting announcements on Green Lantern series, trailers for Black Adam, Shazam 2, and some images from the Flash movies. What are you most excited to see in DC Fandom? Well, number one, I don't think we're going to get trailers for Shazam or Black Adam. I do think we'll get footage. I think we'll get some kind of sizzle, but I don't think we'll get it's a little too early, I think, to have like a full trailer per se, right? But footage? Yeah, we'll get some footage from that. I don't know. I think probably, look, it's obvious. What I'm most excited to see is anything for the Batman. The Batman is what I'm most excited to see. And they're going to follow up on what they showed us last year and give us something far more substantial. By the way, they showed us a bunch of Batman stuff at CinemaCon that was held in Vegas that I really liked, and I cannot wait for everybody to see it as well. So, and I'm sure there's going to be more than that. Like I said, Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz. Apparently, Robert Pattinson said that they made something specifically for DC Fandom as well. So I'm excited to see that too. All right, next up. Let's see. The Super Korean writes, so I just watched The Many Saints of Newark, and it got me thinking, has Ray Liotta reached the status of Robert De Niro or Al Pacino in gangster films now? No. He's an iconic gangster film guy, right? Just go all the way back to Goodfellas. But is he anywhere near that stature of an Al Pacino and Robert De Niro? No. He's ahead of a lot of people, but I wouldn't necessarily put him on the De Niro and Pacino level yet, but he is becoming iconic kind of in those kinds of roles. All right. I really like Ray Liotta. As a matter of fact, I like him a lot. All right. Next up, Mr. Burns writes, one of two. John, how are you today? I'm doing great. Thank you. Hope your weekend went well. I had a great weekend in Vegas. Thank you. Well, with the Squid Game craze going around, I thought I would check it out as well. So far, I've only seen 3 episodes, and I'm liking it quite a bit. To tell you the truth, though, I'm not really a binger. I like to savor each episode and take it in. It also helps me that I will always have some time to watch even when the next show I'm interested in comes out. So I can't wait to watch more of this show and bring on the filthy. Yeah, listen, I think that's the one great thing about week to week, and why services like HBO, like Disney Plus, and others are going to move more towards this, are really enjoying a lot of success with the week to week releases, because it lets the audience soak in that episode It allows social media to explode over the episode. It allows all of fandom to talk about, buzz about, and spread the word about the show. And so then they do it all again the next week. And then they do it all again the next week. And then they do it all again the next week. So watching things like that has its benefits. I myself am a binger. I admit I am a binger, but there are so many benefits if you're on the studio side to doing week-to-week release that eventually I think even Netflix is going to become that. I think within about 3 years, you're going to see Netflix at least making partial, some of their ongoing series will be week to week as well. So yeah, there's that. So you're not alone in that, man. All right, next up. Jonathan writes, so right now I'm reading Batman Year Zero. Zero, I think you meant Year Zero, when the Riddler took over Gotham, and my guess is that Reeves the Batman might be a loose adaptation of it because of the Riddler in that movie. Am I wrong? And have you read Zero Year? It's pretty good. Yeah, I've read all that kind of stuff. The one thing I'll say is this: Matt Reeves has already kind of said publicly that there are several story arcs from the comics that have all been kind of borrowed from, and that's one of them. But he also mentioned a number of the others. So this isn't going to be an adaptation of any one comic book from Batman. It's going to be an original piece that borrows heavily from several of the storylines, classic storylines that have been in Batman. And Matt Reeves says we're probably going to be able to recognize them a lot when we see it. So that seems to be the approach that he's taken on that. All right, next up, we've got Everett M. who writes, hey, John. Okay. I just got out of seeing Venom 2 and it was awesome. So much fun. I love the lighthearted nature of it and the relationship between Venom and Eddie, even with all the violence, which was great. I always had a smile on my face. I can't wait to see what they do next. Yeah, listen, again, Venom 2, Venom Let There Be Carnage is not a movie that's going to be for everybody. And that's understandable. All film's subjective. It's all good. But I'm finding, Everett, that a lot of people did have a good time. And I'm glad you did too. I wouldn't call it my favorite movie of the year. Like I said, even in the comic book world, I put Suicide Squad and Shang-Chi above it, but it's a lot of fun. I had a big smile on my face. I watched it twice. My wife loved it. Like, my wife was laughing and giggling and just having a great time through the whole thing. And by the time we left, she was was glowing and had a great time. And most of the people in my theater did too. So again, it's not for everybody. Definitely isn't, because they do certain things with Venom and with Carnage that maybe some hardcore comic book fans who only represent about 3% of the movie going audience, but would have probably liked to see them do it differently. I respect that. I totally get it. I respect it. But the movie worked for me, and I'm glad it worked for you too, man. All right, next up. Let's see here. Casey McNatt writes, hey, John, how are you today? I'm doing very well, thank you. Hope you are doing well. I am, thanks. I saw Venom 2 on Friday night, and I gotta say I enjoyed it. Big reaction from that post-credit scene, and I'll just leave it at that. Also had a very big crowd, so I wouldn't be surprised if it made over 80. So clearly, this was written in before today, over the weekend, and you aren't wrong, Casey. The movie made well over 80. It made 90. An unbelievable number. Cannot believe how much that damn movie made. It's absolutely crazy. And let's see what kind of legs it has. Although it's going to have a hard time next weekend, because even if a lot of people want to go see it again, a lot of people are going to want to see James Bond No Time to Die as it's opening next weekend. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what kind of second weekend numbers Venom has. But man, did it blow it out of the water in this first one. Absolutely blew it out of the water. All right. Last question today, guys, comes to us from John Martin, who writes, hey, John, last year, Andy Serkis read The Hobbit to raise money for COVID relief, and the publisher got him to do the official audiobook. I read that they just released the Lord of the Rings trilogy. How excited are you to hear Gollum read the Lord of the Rings? Well, listen, I have read those books ad nauseum, particularly The Hobbit, since I was a kid. I mean, so I don't need to go and get an audio version of the book. I'm probably not going to, but if I had never read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, I'd be rushing to get a copy of them being narrated by Andy Serkis. Absolutely, I would be. So I think that's terrific. If you've never had a chance to actually experience the books, go on to Audible and get these things, man, and listen to Andy Serkis narrate them. I think that would be a lot of fun. All right, guys, listen. That'll do it for today's show. We've run out of time. Thank you so much, everybody. There's still more questions to come. We got questions from Jack Lumbers, Johnny Wall, Scott Brown, and a few others. Do not worry, guys. We're going to have I don't know if we're going to have a companion video later tonight, or we might do it live with an After Dark. You know me. I never know. I just drop it at the last minute. So either we're going to have a companion video or an After Dark later. I don't know which one, but one of them, and we will get through all the remaining questions there. But for now, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for making this show part of your day. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett for bringing his glory and goodness. And a special thank you to all you guys who sent in the super chat badges and live chat, and obviously sent in the tip questions as well. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, because you supported this channel as well. And all of us involved here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys so very much for your support. Okay, guys, do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for today, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.